Welcome to Between Two Pastries, everybody. This is Nicole.
Hey everyone, it's Annie.
Today we have a very special guest. This is a client of mine. I don't want to call her an old client, but a client up through high school, went away to college, came back, this amazing person, Miss Marisa Roth. Welcome, my dear.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Marissa reached out to me with this phenomenal email of her passions, what she's been working on, what she's been able to accomplish since going to college, since working through an eating disorder in general. And she just has such an incredible message. I will make sure to put all of her info and even what she emailed me into the show notes. Her amazing picture. Anyway, she's got a wonderful story. Yeah, really, really cool story of, kind of being in a dark place, coming out of that, and what you've kind of all learned from it. So, Marissa, feel free to kind of, start from wherever you want to start, the beginning, what have you, about your whole nutrition journey, and then, where you are now and really what you're kind of here to do.
Yeah, so I started wrestling in sixth grade, and that was my first real introduction into what weight was. And
Ah,
no one ever told me anything. It was just
mm-hmm,
one day at practice, I was put on a scale, and that number was written on a piece of paper.
mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know what a good weight was or even what those numbers really meant at all. And so I kind of put in an arbitrary random number as to something I want it to be with
Ah,
no background whatsoever. And that's kind of how all of my, I guess, ideas started around that. And eventually I kind of struggled with that a lot through middle school and the high school, turned into something more to where my doctors got concerned. And that's where I ended up reaching out to you, um, a nutritionist.
awesome. Or not awesome, but I'm just saying, like,
Mhm.
Annie and I talk about this an awful lot. And even just in your intro, it's just, I think it's interesting for my listeners to actually hear from an individual who experienced this type of experience at such a young age around weight. Wouldn't you agree, Annie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then to be able to have the foresight to know what to do, because that typically doesn't happen. Typically it's, 5, 10 years later, we're finally doing something about it. So that's a
Right.
really huge, 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 huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about wrestling too, like you said, you didn't have a connection with weight at all until you went to this doctor's office. That's what I'm saying. Like that message is just so, it's so big. And I don't think people realize the impact of that. And you know that firsthand. You're here to speak of that firsthand. And you chose a sport, like you were saying, where there's a lot of stigma around weight with, being in a weight class or, so I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, so in wrestling, a big thing is you want to be in the lightest weight class that you can be. And I feel like a lot of it is because you feel like you have the best opportunity there. You're more likely to win being a larger one in that weight class. But for me, especially, it got really hard, I'd say, because I wanted to be at that lowest weight class, not only because of my sport, but also because of that societal norm of girls should be smaller. So that played a huge part into that as well. But then just to add a third layer to it, in sports, you want to be, especially wrestling, you want to be big and strong and have all these muscles and so then that played another role. So it's kind of back and forth between trying to be
Mhm.
small and light, but also being that big,
Yes.
muscular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that was one of the things you were working on when we were working together. And again, like just hearing you say verbatim, what Annie and I talk about all the time is just,
Hmm.
it's like mind blowing,
Oh yeah.
I mean, you said it right there. Girls are supposed to be small. Like it's just so fascinating and just interesting.
Well, and
Yeah.
but also too, like that depends on who you talk to. You go to the doctor and it's, well, your BMI is this, and you talk to your parents, and then it's supposed to be, this figure, and you talk to your coaches, and it's this figure, and it's all an idea of what people think is right or fit or, healthy, and
Mhm.
none of it is right.
No, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And even to your point too, where you were like, I'm going back and forth with like needing to be or feeling like you wanting to be light and yet wanting to have all these muscles, which we know muscle weighs so much more, right? And could potentially put you in this higher BMI, even though you're like a solid rock. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it just really plays with your head, like you said. So do you want to talk about some of those inner struggles you were having and how that maybe had played out earlier in your wrestling career?
Yeah, so a lot of it, how it started in middle school, I had no idea what these numbers were. I picked a number that I thought sounded like a good number, I guess. There's no
Hmm.
reasoning behind it. And then I started just weighing myself more
Mm,
and working out more. So every time there was like Thanksgiving would come up, okay, now I'm gonna go for a 5 mile run just to make sure and counteract that. I felt like kind of had to earn what I ate. And then as I started like growing with that, I learned what calories were through
mm,
wrestling. So I started restricting those.
ugh,
And so now I'm overworking out, not eating enough. My body's still not where I necessarily want it to be. So then we get into high school, and then I started going, okay, well, now I feel guilty for eating. So then I
mm,
started purging, and that
oh,
kind of dynamic came into all of it as well. And so now I'm trying to do all these things. I hear my coaches saying, you want to be lighter. Um, and so that also came out in like my emotions too. I get really upset over that. I beat myself up over what I eat. If I missed a workout, that was super hard for me. So, and I was trying to do all that while still competing and not telling people. So that's kind of how it
mm.
like showed, and it seeped into all areas of my life, like my sports, my sleep, working out.
Mhm.
So it has a large impact.
Yeah,
Did you
it's
notice a change too academically within high school?
I was able to, if you just like flat out look at my transcripts, I was able to keep straight A's, but I would say that I was such a perfectionist in that regard,
Mm,
that it showed academically that I was still getting A's. But I wanted that perfect body image
mhm,
too. I think
mhm.
for some people,
sure.
it might show in like a grade drop, but I think mine showed in like a straight A kind of aspect of wanting that perfect image.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting,
Yeah,
interesting. It's like you have the
absolutely.
per we use this word perfect a lot today, but like the perfect storm,
Mm-hmm.
of what kind of can happen in eating disorder,
Yep.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think of like timeline here too, in the behaviors you were kind of doing, during your sport to make sure you were kind of hitting certain things. And this is just common in wrestling in general for both
Mm-hmm.
men, definitely, and females as well. What was the point where you're just like, because I'm hearing you say this and I'm feeling exhausted at the same time. Like it's just so like wearing and like takes so much energy. You know what I mean? Like it just does. I mean, I'm sure you understand that, kind of even looking back. Um, so I'm just kind of curious on like what was the point where, unless it was from an outside person like your mom or a coach or something where you were thinking like, I have to do something about this.
Yeah, so I would say um, my mom was always really concerned
Mhm,
about me in that
mhm,
regard. She'd
yeah,
always kind of check in. Um, it wasn't super apparent until high school. And meanwhile, I was trying to hide all of this too. And I didn't know what was necessarily going on with my emotions either. So
mhm,
I wasn't sure I needed help.
yeah,
And so, but my mom kept checking in. The big one where she started noticing things was when I started purging. I'd disappear in the bathroom for too long, so she started coming in and checking on me,
Mm,
and, she was able to sit me down a couple times and share her story on that too, because on
mm,
my mom's side, there's a history of eating disorders,
sure.
and so she did a really good job trying to get me help, and I had gone to see a nutritionist before, like, my freshman year in high school,
Mhm,
but they didn't give me what I needed. It
mhm.
was just kind of like a blank face of, "Oh, just stop doing that." And, so then I
Doesn't
was
work
like, "Oh,
that
I
way.
don't
That's
need."
it.
Yeah. And I also didn't think I needed help either because I didn't think I fit into a certain eating disorder. Like,
Mm.
I wasn't underweight, so I wasn't anorexic, but I wasn't binge eating, so I wasn't bulimic.
Mhm,
So
Mhm.
that also was like, "Oh, I'm fine. I don't need help."
mhm, mhm.
Did you notice other teammates, male or female, were doing the same behaviors? Like, was it all
Mm,
very normalized? I mean, I know cutting weight is,
yeah.
but actual eating disorder behaviors, is that pretty normalized and something the coach even is aware of?
Um, I would say the in wrestling, for my team, I didn't run into it a ton. I can recall one male who did have an issue with it, but it was from outside things. He had like a hard personal life that he was kind of going through that kind of triggered it.
Mhm.
Um, but as for the wrestling team, I felt very not targeted, but like I was kinda singled out more for my weight, and I think it had to do because I was one of the only girls on the team in that environment,
Oh,
so I was held to a higher expectation, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
mhm,
yep,
mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when at what point did it come out that when your mom knew you were purging, you were using these behaviors, you started to seek some treatment. Did your team find out at any point, or
Mm,
did you have to let your coaching staff know?
I ended up not telling no one on my team knows.
mm.
That's something that I haven't spoken on really at all. I think this is the first time I'm having a big open conversation about this, but
Well, welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
but I ended up having to tell my coach because got I had to go see doctors and stuff, and he ended up pulling me out and
Mm,
saying that he wasn't going to let me wrestle until I was cleared by a doctor, which
Mm.
I'm not necessarily sure was the best reaction on that end, but I am thankful that he took me out to take that pressure off,
Mhm.
to kind
yeah.
of allow me to, I guess, take care of myself and not worry about wrestling.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective to hear you say that. Like you're thankful because it helped take pressure off. Again, it makes sense, as an eating disorder.
Right.
Um, and I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember.
with
Yeah,
perfectionism, it would take pressure off.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm.
And you came to me, I remember originally, I think it was, didn't you have an injury or something?
Yeah, it was right before my injury, but
Got it. That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which led to more time off. I mean, I remember you going to practices and watching. I remember that, whole thing too. So, you mentioned in your notes too, and you kind of used these are your own words. I'm just reflecting back to you, but you said that when we were working together, you were really scared at first, which I remember that too. And then you said that you were able to kind of break through that fear. What was that point for you? Like,
Mhm.
what was it just I don't want to put words in your mouth. Was it just simply walking through the steps and realizing, okay, this isn't that bad, or all my fears are not coming to fruition? Or what was that point for you, if you remember specifically?
Yeah, I remember, like, I had known this entire time that, I had to eat more, and hearing it like laid out super specifically, those were things that I had kind of known. In wrestling, you know a lot about nutrition. I was able to pick up things. So it wasn't anything that was like super extremely new to me, but just the fact that it was like so concrete and I had somebody like there who
Mm,
knew what they were talking about and was kind of like holding my hand the whole way.
yeah.
um I thought, okay, like I know I have to do this. I've been trying to for the
Mm,
past how many years. I haven't been able to get over it. I'm just going to do it. And so then one day I made that decision. I laid out all of my meals that night before and I was like, okay, tomorrow that's going to be the day. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to eat it. I'm not going to think about it. And that's what it's going to be. And I ended up doing that, eating it when I was supposed to. Everything was pre-packed. It felt scary and I
mhm,
didn't really want to do it. But by the end of the day, I was like, I doing it a couple of days and I was still scared, but then I had like checked my weight and that was the same. But I felt 10 times better. So I was like, okay, this isn't actually real. And I remember telling my friends at lunch too. Like a weekend, I was like, yeah, like I'm eating more and I feel so good. I haven't felt this way in a long time.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
really cool.
believe that that's
Mhm.
called fake it till you make
Make
it.
it.
You
Yep.
just close your eyes and because you
You
do. I
jump
work
in.
with plenty of patients where they just go through the motion of eating. They don't want to, they don't get it, but they have to do it. And then some, not all, have that realization similar to yours of like, oh, wow, I can sleep now. My hair's not falling out. My weight actually didn't change, or, and sometimes it needs to change. So it kind of
Right,
depends on
right. Of
what's going
course.
on for them. But
Yeah.
it's amazing physiologically how they can feel things happening and they feel better,
Yeah.
even just
Yeah.
after a couple days.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and also, going back to even your ultimate goal as an athlete, strength was so important to you, and having that energy to just do what you have to do was so important to you. So, um, I'd like to think you were experiencing that on the mat as well.
Yeah. I had to kind of reframe my mindset of eating to fuel my body. And so I'm not someone who necessarily, I guess, enjoys food. So I think of it more of like what it is.
Hmm.
So it's like I need this much protein, this many carbs, this much of fruits or whatever food
Yeah.
variety. And I put all of that together and then I eat that because I'm like, this is kind of like my workout. It's structured, it has all the
Mm.
parts I need. And now I just need to put that inside of me. And that's kind of how I looked at it. And it helped me a lot to get through all of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so great. That's so great. And so, how would you kind of describe your experience now with eating versus then? Does it feel easier? Is it the same? Is it, what's that like for you?
It's that initial like giant fear is pretty much, I wouldn't say gone, but gone. There are still a couple
hmm,
times that it bubbles up a little, and
Hmm.
sometimes some meals are a little harder than others. That's something that I don't necessarily think goes away. It's just something you learn um, as a part of yourself and learn how to get yourself through it. Just like anything, you go through something hard like that, there's always going to be little pieces that come back, but you just have to remember why you're doing it and how you ended up there in the first place.
hmm.
So well said, Marissa. And when you talk about kind of, when you're feeling whatever you want to feel, if feeling triggered, all of a sudden a thought enters your mind that's like, okay, that hasn't been there for a while. Here this is. Um, how have you taken care of yourself through it? Because I thought it was so beautifully said how you're like, I just kind of help walk myself through it. That's part of it. Self-care is really part of it. Self-awareness is really part of it. And how do you do that for yourself?
Something that I started doing at my house was I wrote out little like index cards and I made them all pretty with markers and stuff. And I wrote little reminders in there. So like in
Mhm.
the bathroom, I
Yep.
put a reminder like um, I think it was like ways to like rest days are just as important as your workouts. And I had that in my room. I had another one on my mirror every morning, and I said, "You can get through this moment," just to
Oh,
remind myself that I can get through whatever that fear is that I'm having. And then I also like meal prep too, because that helps me. Because a lot of my excuses will come from, "Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I don't have time."
mm-hmm.
So that's something else that I've noticed.
But look at you prioritizing. You're being your own cheerleader. You're relying on yourself to, it's so big, Marissa. I don't think you
Mhm.
realize how big that is, especially, I don't mean to use the term like at your age, but you're still like in this younger state, and I mean, it's incredible. You're just such a great
Yeah,
example.
it takes years for people.
Hmm.
My population is adults, and it takes them years just to figure out that that colorful note card is amazing.
Yeah,
Like there's so much resistance to doing that, or meal prep, or
right.
putting in any little bit of effort to actually help yourself.
That's right.
And yet that little bit of effort is actually what really gets this ball rolling on recovery, and it makes a huge difference. So you just like, went the fast track
Hmm.
for treatment without actually having treatment, right? Like
Right.
that's huge, especially at a younger age, because now you get to live, you get to experience college, which I assume you were able to do a bit more. I mean, imagine having your high school self physiologically and mentally in college.
Right.
It doesn't go well. Like
Right.
that's a tough thing, right? So how did your parents, how were they when you transitioned from high school to college?
Um, my mom, um, I'd like to think throughout high school, I kind of slowly um, grew up. Like I started spending summers away and things like that too. So I'd say my college transition was a little more like independent than I'd say most people. Like my mom helped me move in for a day, but like moving out and stuff, I just did it on my own.
Mhm.
For like the parents' weekend and stuff, I just stayed there myself. I didn't have parents come up. um, so
So
um,
she didn't worry and have to call you around meals, or like there was a trust there as it relates to eating and purging and
yeah,
behaviors. Good.
yeah, I was able to go to the dining hall, and based off what I had known from talking with you about nutrition and stuff, I was able to get all the meals that I needed in my scheduled time. There'd be occasional phone calls where I'd call my mom running from thing to thing, and she'd remind me, be like, "Make sure you eat." Um, but it was never something where she had to call me and remind me. It was
Mhm.
something that I was doing, but she'd definitely check in on me here and there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Good. It's good though, because I mean, there can be a lot of broken trust between
Mm.
family members, especially with purging. And so that transition to college can really be hard on everyone, but also
Yeah.
too, it's a different layer of pressure for a perfectionist to now have phone calls and buzzing from family members to see that you're okay, when over here you're really doing your best. So that's great that you guys have a good relationship in that regard, with the eating disorder.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a big deal. I'm sure she's actually really proud of you.
Mhm.
Yep,
Now, are you
she,
wrestling in college?
yeah, I am.
Oh, nice. How is that from a team, as a team with eating disorders? Are there any? Do you see any of that at the college level as opposed to high school?
I'm not from my team. I don't see eating disorders. If there is, it's not apparent to me, but I can see unhealthy relationships with food,
Ah,
Mhm.
yeah,
um, and
naturally.
people not fully understanding what good nutrition is or a good way to go about cutting weight is.
Mm,
So I definitely see that.
hmm.
That's
Hmm.
almost more frustrating than an eating
Yeah.
disorder. Like sometimes that can be worse
Yeah.
for people. Are those, especially with cutting weight,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that can really be unsafe and for
Very.
your heart. So
Very.
that's too bad. I mean, do you feel like over the years, and again, I remember wrestling, and I certainly didn't wrestle, but I remember friends doing it, way back 20 years ago. So I don't know what it's like now, but I feel like coaches in general are getting a little bit better with, you know, kids and adults have to eat and
Right.
drink and having this awareness. So I'm hoping that you're seeing that too from your coaching staff. Just more support in that regard.
Yeah, we're provided resources for nutritionists like on campus that we're allowed to use as resources.
Mm,
And then we're also not allowed to have like practice time um for the last like hour or two that the dining hall is open to make sure we can get there for food.
nice.
And if we do have practice, then they're supposed to provide us with dinner.
Yeah,
Nice.
that is
Good.
really good.
Good. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. So overall, you have a few messages that you want to make sure that you get across, and you're also kind of on a mission to really share your message with, different groups, high schools, things like that. So if you want to speak a little bit around that would be great.
Yeah, so there were a couple main points that I feel like I kind of talked on, but
Hmm.
just to re-emphasize that, the biggest thing that I've learned about my body, I guess, is that it's a machine, and I take pride in everything that it is capable of doing and that I've trained it to do. And I think that every person should get to a place where they can feel and say the same thing, no matter what it is. Um, and then also what I've learned from this, especially, is that I don't think that winning first gets medals. I won state 3 times in high school and I was celebrated for that.
Hmm.
But the thing I was most proud of that I didn't win an award for was getting through this kind of hard time mental battle. And to me, that's what wins a medal. So just keeping that in mind, it's like the battles that aren't seen are most
Hmm.
important. Um, and
Yeah.
then another thing that I've kind of picked out was that there's always going to be a voice in your head. But the beauty of that is that it's your voice in your head. So you can decide what it says. And the day you choose to go against that kind of negative thought and replace it with something good, that's when things will start to change. So remember, it's yours. And then lastly, the biggest thing for me that helped me get through this is food is simply fuel for my body. So you wouldn't put just like a gallon of gas in your car and then try and take it on a road trip. So don't do that to your body. So,
Hmm. It's so well said,
Wow.
Marissa. You just said
Oh
so
my
many great
God.
things. I just love that so much. Good for you, hon.
Marissa,
Especially,
what is your major in school?
I'm double majoring in mechanical engineering and math.
You could add dietetics to
wow.
that and be an eating disorders specialist. Like that's so insightful. I love
Yeah,
it.
it is really insightful. It's beautiful, and it makes sense though what you're you have such a focus. You're so smart, hon. So
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
really proud of you. Really proud of you.
Thank
Yeah,
that's
absolutely,
huge.
absolutely. It's really
Huge.
big. Well, it has been a real pleasure. It's just bizarre to have like worked with you. Um, I'm allowing the tears not to come through. But it's just been neat to see you grow up, but so quickly. And then, like I said, when I received your email about what you're trying to do and looking for opportunity, it was just like, I can't believe I'm actually reading this. And then like seeing your picture, and because it's so bizarre. I was literally kind of just thinking about you like the week before, kind of like, oh, I wonder how she's doing. I know she's at school, blah, blah, blah. And then to get that, I'm sorry, I'm just like, I sound like a mom. Oh, you've grown so, whatever. But anyway, this has just been a real pleasure. One thing that we always ask our guests is, and I know you don't necessarily enjoy food, but if you do or could have a favorite food, what would that be?
you. Oh, that's easy. Mac and cheese.
Oh gosh,
Oh,
heck
nice.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
homemade, Velveeta, Kraft. Do you have a certain brand?
I usually go out to eat after wrestling tournaments at Max Mac and Cheese.
Oh, sweet.
Ah, okay.
There,
So
she's
like a
got it.
legit mac and
That's
cheese.
right.
Nice.
That's right.
That's awesome. So
That's
homemade.
great.
Good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool.
That's so great. That's so great. Well, thanks again for being here, Marissa. We will let you know when this airs. Any last words at all before we close?
Just thank you for having
You're
You
so
bet.
welcome. You're so welcome. Well, thanks again. And
Yeah, thank you.
again, feel free to reach out to Marissa too, or if you have a group that you would not mind her coming in and speaking to, she would be happy to work with you as well. So again, we'll put all of her information into the show notes. Thanks again, Marissa, for your time. We so appreciate it.